I've been here a decade or so, give or take, and I get to share with you one of my favorite subjects today. So I'm going to tell you in the first minute and a half the most important thing for you to remember today. It's the most important medicinal herb gardening thing I can teach you, and that is plant now, learn later. When you put a perennial plant in the ground, it takes 2 to 3 years to reach its full maturity, which means if you want to go out and harvest sage today, you have 2 to 3 years before you'll have a plant ready. So if you don't know about it, that's okay. Put it in anyway, because you can learn about it later while it's getting caught up. And so the biggest thing I would tell you is right underneath the title here is Plant Now, Learn Later. I'm going to start by sharing a little bit of how I got here. I wasn't always a granola. Yeah, one of those ladies that my kids make fun of. But I started about probably 12 or 15 years ago putting in culinary herbs, because I started working here and I was kind of intrigued, but I thought, you know, even if I don't know what to do with them, if the world goes crazy and I have to eat the wheat and the beans and the rice in my basement, I'm going to be glad for anything I have to change the flavor out in my yard, right? And I could technically count it as food storage. Honey, I got more food storage. Look at these 3 herbs I bought. So that's where I started. I started putting those in. And then probably the plant that kind of sent me another direction, is we'll talk about later. It's called prunella, but its regular name is self-heal. And that just intrigued. I was like, what is self-heal? The tag says nothing about why it's called self-heal. And so that kind of started my brain spinning. I also started with the culinary herbs. I started looking at food and learning a lot about nutrition. And what I found as I studied, and that's what trickled down to this, is the God who created me also created my food source. And that's how people ate for thousands of years. And the Industrial Revolution and all of the good things it brought also brought some huge changes to our food. So instead of eating an apple, we eat Apple Jacks, right? Which is a long, long ways from what the creator of my whole body made for me to eat. It's like, so I always think of it as this like spectrum where we have Twinkies over here and asparagus, you know, like it's. And so my goal as a mom and for my family was to try to swing our food closer to the fuel that the creator of me designed for me. I have a friend who teaches food classes, and I love this analogy because she said, all of us think it's crazy that we would buy an automobile that has an owner's manual that says, you know, gasoline, 85, that's what you put in it. And we would put it in our garage and fill it with grape juice and be like, this thing is crap. I got a lemon. It doesn't even work, right? But we do that with our bodies where we have all these things that we're created for, and we put in fluff, and then we're like, man, my body is just killing me. I don't know what's wrong. So as I started studying food, that was one. There's a thing called oxalate toxicity it's kind of a new thing. It's come about partly because of the green smoothie craze. Because none of us would get up in the morning and eat a pound of spinach for breakfast. It's a big salad, and it's a big pile of wilted greens. But in a smoothie, we can throw it in, blend it up, and drink a pound of spinach before noon, which is a good thing, right? We're trying on this spectrum. What happens is we were using it in a way beyond what nature can provide for us. Commercialized farming can provide that. Grocery stores can provide that. But if you were growing spinach, there's no way you're going out and getting a pound every morning per person for everyone in your family. It's just out of balance with nature. And so I learned that in food, and then I started looking at what I was using on or in my body, thinking, I might have done the same thing in this category of my life. The essential oil craze was on the upswing at the same time that I was doing my food journey. And it seemed great, right? They're from plants, so they're natural, great, except that, how many of you have ever heard of Melissa oil? Anybody? It's one of the most expensive essential oils. It's like $120 or $140 an ounce. The reason for that is it's made from the lemon balm plant. And in order to produce 1 pound of Melissa oil, it takes 6,000 pounds of lemon balm. Can you see how we might be out of balance with nature? Lavender, we just use the flowers. 250 pounds of lavender to make 1 pound of oil. That's a lot of tea. You only need like 5 flower heads for tea, so imagine. And same thing, the rose oil, it takes 5,000 pounds of petals. And so as I looked at this, I thought, gosh, I think that we're kind of on this same spectrum, right? Where actual lemon balm tea versus lemon balm essential oils. And the people I knew are slathering it on their skin, they're slathering it on their children, they're putting it in their water to drink. And I thought, this is like kind of the same thing as the food that I'm looking at. And so I started looking at whole herbs and thinking, you know what, that's what was created for me to use. And then I've started using these things commercialized to this other end of the spectrum. So that kind of started. And then the self-heal, I was like, So that combination of things is how I got here. And sometimes I still shake my head at it. But I feel like that there's lots of great things. Last year we tried to pull medicinal herbs to the front of the bed. And as we started doing it, we were like, there's no way. Pretty much almost everything out there has a purpose. We just don't know it yet. And so that's why I share with you to plant now. Come in, it's okay. To plant now and learn later, because there's so much to learn. If you wait till you know about every plant to plant them, then you're going to be behind. The other thing I thought is the same thing with the annual herbs. If the world ends and there's a shortage of medicine and I've grown it, someone will know how to use it. If it's not me, someone will, right? But I already have it. So I thought it's kind of a rainy day thing. The other thing that you think about is healthcare costs and deductibles are. So if you can take care of minor things at home and not have to run your children to the hospital or to the take them in, then there's no herb that will fix surgery or broken bones. I'm not saying that, but there are herbs that will take care of bee stings and ear infections and things like that. So lots of things can be done at home. Come in, sit down, or if you just need to ask a question, these guys are here to help you. So we're going to go through this list a little bit and talk about these plants. I'll show them to you so you know what they look like. Hopefully some of them you have in your yard. When I started getting into this, I have a native and water-wise yard. So I've planted lots of drought-tolerant things, and I went through and was like, I have this, and I have this, and I have this. And you guys will probably do the same thing as we go through this and think, I have that growing. Like, I'm ready to do something with this. I know this is a whole lot of information. It's so hard to narrow it down. There's lots of other plants out there that are herbs that have medicinal properties. I tried to pick some that are great landscaping plants that you can put in now and then keep learning about them. We're going to start with this one. This is called Achillea. Its common name is yarrow. Gosh. The wild yarrow that people use, lots of times flowers white. Same properties in this one, in the yellow one, or in the white one that's up on the mountain. This stuff is so cool. The whole plant is medicinal. You can use any part of it. And I will tell you that I have drilled into my husband. He hikes by himself a lot, and I'm always like, that's not very smart, but that this stops bleeding. And I'm like, if you ever gash yourself, chew up these leaves and pack them in that. Stops it like this. You can also dry the plant and powder it, and if you get a cut, you can, funny story, I did that. I had a powder on my counter. I swear I cut myself on my knives all the time, and I went weeks without cutting myself. And one morning, my husband was walking out the door, and I said, "Wah!" And he's like, "What?" And I was like, "I cut myself." And he's like, I was like, I gotta use my yarrow. I'm going to see if it works. And it works. It really works. He just thought I was funny and amusing. But if you're squeamish, do this right now, and I'll wave my hand when we're done at this part. But a year ago, we got a new batch of baby chicks, and we put them in with the big chickens, but in fenced-off area. We thought they were good. and I went out to check on him, and one of those dang little babies had stuck their head into the big coop, and the older chickens had just gone crazy on her. She had a flap. The skin from right here was laying out this direction. My husband said you could see, like, her spine. It was really bad. And I was standing there while he's got this, we're like, what do we do with this? I feel responsible for this thing, but it might be too far gone. And I thought, I have yarrow. And so I go booking into the house, and I come out waving my powdered yarrow, and he's like, here she is with her herbs, right? I'm not kidding. We sprinkled that on, and he goes, it's scabbed over already. Like, it was immediately coagulated everything and stopped the bleeding. We also made a mix of a couple of these plants, and we would spray it on her twice a day. And in 2 weeks, she was completely feathered back out again. So it was, he's a believer. He's a little better. Yes?
I'll be honest.
What?
And some people it does sting when you put it on.
On the yarrow? It doesn't on me, so I don't know. And the chicken didn't cry. Does it sting on you?
Yes.
There you go. It might sting.
But
It does stop the bleeding.
And it stings a little, so.
I think that we're wimpy compared to everyone else that's ever lived on the planet prior to the last 100 years, right? Because there's a reason Mary Poppins sang A Spoonful of Sugar, because medicine was not great. It was, I can remember my mom saying, your stomach hurts? I'll get the castor oil. And I was like, Mom, I'm feeling better already, right? I don't want anything to do with that. So, yes. So it does, and that's one of the things with herbs. They're not always super pleasant, but you can learn to be tough. So can your kids. So anyway, I love yarrow for that. Yarrow is also good for a healing salve, so it's good to infuse in oil because it's good for all kinds of skin conditions. So it's just great, but I just love it for bleeding because it's so magic. It's kind of like, woohoo. So next one, this one's not on your list, but it's an annual, but I wanted to share it because it's amazing. But it's seeds, so once you plant it, you'll always have it. It's called calendula. They advertise it in beauty products. Calendula, including calendula oil. The flower is the medicine. It's my least favorite thing when the flower is the medicine, because that's what I don't want to do. So you have to harvest the flowers on this one.
Do you dry them and powder them?
You can use them fresh, but usually you dry them and use them in a tea. Or you can use them infused in oil. So an oil infusion is basically dried flowers and you pour oil on top. And then you let it sit for 6 weeks. Then you strain the plant material out. And then you could use it to make a lotion or a lip balm or...
Do you let it sit in a sunny windowsill?
No. Sun destroys herbs. So you never want to dry them and you never want to set them. Some people say that, but it's not good. Yes?
So I have a couple of questions. The first one has to do with the oil infusion. Is there a certain ratio of plant to oil that you use to get the...
Good question. I am an exacting kind of person, and I like people to tell me A plus B equals C, right? So this is going to frustrate you all because I hate it when people do this. But if you think about the 1700s or the 1800s when your great-great-great-grandmother was infusing oil, there were no exact measuring cups, right? There were no tablespoons. So it's called the folk method. And if you're going to sell something and you need a consistent potency, then you need to learn the ratios and do. But for the folk method, you just fill a jar with flowers and you pour oil over the top.
Oh.
And so you may have to adjust, a dosage or something, but the folk method is basically what you have. And I just keep trying to remember that we live in an exacting world where we can measure to the 5,000th because we have calculators and but that's not how things have been done for thousands of years. This is the method that everyone has used for a long time. So that's what I use. Typically for tea, it's 1 to 2 teaspoons per cup, 1 to 2 teaspoons of dried herb per cup. I like stronger tea. I don't like just off water. So I use a tablespoon per, and you can adjust it for you based on what you think, but that's kind of a general rule of thumb. I gotta hurry, look at all these herbs. Chamomile, there's 2 kinds. There's Roman and German. I listed both of them on there. The German is an annual, but it reseeds, so you'll have it. Once you have it, you have it. It flowers up a little higher, so if you're gonna pick the flowers off, This one's a little bit easier. The other one's more like a ground cover. Chamomile, if you have any kind of digestive irritation, it's one of the best. It acts on the nerves. It's calming. So it's a good one to drink before bed, just to kind of settle down and quiet your mind. But it's also really good for all the nerves in the digestive system. So you can drink chamomile tea. My daughter was in Canada for a couple of years, and that's anytime they had an upset stomach, they would be like, I'm going to make you some tea. So she's never touched it in her life, but she came home and she drinks chamomile tea now. So one other thing I was going to tell you about chamomile, because I just keep thinking, where was all of this when I was a mom of little kids? I felt like I lived at the doctor sometimes for this little thing and that little thing. My husband, it's probably been a year and a half ago, got up in the morning and he was like, I don't know what happened. He goes, look at my eye. And he just had this, it looked like he had a bubble underneath his skin right here. He goes, I woke up in the middle of the night, this was killing me, and look how swollen it is. Well, he came home from work that day. His eye was all red, and it had dripped down his cheek, and it was swollen like out to here. And since I don't have any kids at home, he has to be my guinea pig. And I was like, listen, I heard chamomile tea works for this. Can I try this? And so I just made a batch of tea, and he just sat in the evening and soak a cloth in it and put it on his eye, and then he would take it off for a while, and then he would put it back on. And he woke up the next morning with nothing wrong with his eye. And I was like, where was this? Your kid gets pink eye, and it's like, panic, we got to have drops, everybody's going to be oozing. Pink eye is called conjunctivitis, and all it means is an eye infection. It's not a certain eye infection, it's just an eye infection, and chamomile helps with that. So FYI, if your kid gets that and it's Sunday and you don't have a doctor available for the next day, you can even take tea bags, if you have chamomile tea bags, and just put them on, because they have the same thing. So soak them in the tea and then use them to put on. But it was kind of awesome because, again, he loves me, but he sometimes thinks this is odd, and it worked. So it's used all over. There's lots of other places that are better at herbs. We rely on pharmaceuticals first, and a majority of other countries go herbs first and pharmaceuticals second. So it's common. Yes?
If you don't like tea, is there a way to use it?
Oh, that's a good question if you don't like tea. I have a sister who put on her bucket list, learn to like tea. So she called me a lot, right? And she's like, I just don't love it. And I'll tell you a couple things that will help. One tea bag for a giant cup of water tastes like off water. Put in 2, so make it stronger. Number 1. And then I said to her, well, did you add any honey or any vanilla? And she was like, what? Oh, vanilla in mint tea. I brought it. It must be in my car. Is the best stuff ever. And I use mint to cover up all the other herbs. So if I'm going to use an ephedra and a goldenrod and I'm going to do a decongestant, it's also going to have mint in it because I love mint and I can drink that and it hides everything else. So I always put a little bit of vanilla and a little bit of sweetener in, sometimes in the winter even milk.
Lemon, honey?
So that's one of the secrets. She was like, I didn't know people put stuff in tea. And I was like, neither did I, but turns out they do. So if you don't like tea, we'll try some. This is my daughter-in-law, so I'll let you have some.
Okay. But I'm just actually really curious, is there any way to use it besides
There
tea?
is. There's something called a tincture. And a tincture is basically you fill the bottle with dried herb, and then you pour vodka over the top.
Until the herb is...
Until the herb is saturated over the top. But you take it in drops. So if you've ever taken NyQuil, you've had more alcohol than you'll ever get dosing from a tincture. Dried is usually better, so they usually do a tincture out of dried. So if you hate tea, you can take a tincture. They don't taste better, but you only take 1 swallow. So they taste way worse than tea, but I do use tinctures as well. The good thing about a tincture is we are off track, but we'll hurry. That's okay. A tincture lasts for a really long time because the alcohol preserves everything. If you buy dried herbs from Mountain Rose Herbs or Amazon, they have a 1-year shelf life. So it's better to plant them because then you can you only have to have enough to make it till the next harvest, right? You don't have to store, and you can't store more than a year's worth because that's as long as they last. If you store them yourself and dry them, they have a 2, and a few of them have a 3 year, so they're a little bit longer. But Tinctures last super long, and you can make tea by putting a dose of tincture in a cup of water. I don't know why you would do that because they don't taste very good. So you put it in a tiny bit of water and just choke it down. But yes, you can use these the same way with the tincture. And you can do a glycerin tincture for children. It's a sweeter. I can't tell you about that because I haven't done those. Yes.
So you use vodka, not like Everclear.
Everclear you have to use for things that have a resinous texture.
I do it for my mushrooms.
So if you wanted to do, like, there's a weed called gumweed that's really sticky and resinous. So you would need to use Everclear for a gumweed. But for most things, just walk into the liquor store and say, show me your cheapest vodka. And watch them look at you. I know where it's at now, so I don't have to ask anymore. But the first time I walked in, I didn't know there was so much alcohol in the world, I'll just tell you. I was overwhelmed. There were bottles. I was like, I just stood there and everyone looked and I was like, can someone show me where the vodka is? I was dying. Now I just go get it. But anyway, so you can use a tincture, and most things can be tinctured. The nice thing about a tincture is the long storage life. Comfrey's name is called bone knit. Its common name is bone knit because it has a compound in it that helps with cell generation and division. So if you had a sprain, a ligament tear, a broken bone, a poultice of comfrey will help expedite healing. A poultice is just chopped up plant. If it is dry, you just pour some hot water on it to soften it up, or if it's fresh, you can still pour water on it, and you just can put it straight on. You can put it in a towel and put the towel on, and you would just do that multiple times. You can, depends on, you can make a tea and soak your foot in it if you've got an ankle that's sore or a hand that's sore. The compound will be in the water, so. Ephedra.
Warm water, cold water?
Warm water for an infusion, not boiling. Just really warm.
No, if you're going to put your hand or foot
Yeah,
or whatever.
just make it, so you'd make a tea, which means you would almost boil the water,
So
10 minutes. You can leave the leaves in and just stick your foot in it. So, ephedra, also called Brigham tea or Mormon tea. When the Mormons came through, this is what they replaced black tea with when they got here. It is a natural antihistamine, and it gives you an energy burst. Not caffeine, and I don't think it tastes bad. So. Oh, I forgot the huge disclaimer. These will interact with prescription drugs and over-the-counter drugs, so you have to watch that if you're going to use herbs. My sister called me the other day. She was taking passion flower drops, and she was like, I feel like I am drunk. And I was like, they shouldn't really do that to you. She goes, I'm not kidding you. I'm getting nothing done. I'm just on the couch because I'm. And I was like, what? And she called me the next day and said, I took a Claritin before I took that. And the combination really hit her. So you do have to be cautious about those. Thank you for that reminder, whoever said that, because I don't really take I don't do over-the-counter, so I forget that that's so don't. I was going to say, don't take, high blood pressure medication and then take a blood pressure lowering herb because you'll drop too low. So you have to watch that. Echinacea, everybody's probably heard of Echinacea. It's an immune stimulant, so it helps ramp up your immune system, and it's a natural antibiotic. The flowers are medicinal, the leaves are medicinal, and the roots are the most potent. But why would you want to kill the roots? It's kind of one of those, like a quiet student that kind of slips in the back of the room and takes notes all period and then slips out and no one really noticed they were there. That's how this one is. So it's usually good to take it with something like ginger or peppermint. That's kind of a jump to make sure it gets noticed in your system. That sounds silly, but that's it needs kind of a companion. But it's good. I read a study when I was just the other day that they had done studies on it, and it made the flu, it had the same shortening time as Tamiflu.
Oh, wow.
For taking Echinacea. So they took it right at the start. It's 3 or 4 cups of tea per day is the dosage. But I thought that was interesting that in their study, it had the 1 to 4 day shortening. Tamiflu only shortens the flu by 1 to 4 days, depending on how severe it is. But so does Echinacea. So there you go. Yeah, and if you grow it, you have it. just like a regular loose leaf tea. I love, no, you can, but you don't have to when it's in season. You just dry it for when it's not. I use a French press. That's my favorite for loose leaf tea. It works so much better than anything. I've tried the tea ball and leaves leak out, and so I love a French press. I was going to bring it, but I used it this morning, so it wasn't clean. This is called Rudbeckia hirta. So it's a black-eyed Susan, but it's not the typical small leaf variety. This used to be listed in the same genus as Echinacea. They've split it in the last decade or so because that's what botanists do. It has the same properties as Echinacea and possibly is stronger. So you can tell the difference in these plants. Can you see which one might be more robust? Which one might be busting out the foliage and the roots? So this one's a great one to use because it's much more of a fast grower. It has all of the same characteristics as Echinacea, but it is prolific. So it's not the little small-leafed Rudbeckia, though, black-eyed Susan. It's this big, fat, fuzzy-leafed one that you want. We have 3 different heights and 3 different colors, so you can Rudbeckia up your whole yard if you want to. This one's called Feverfew. It's on your list. Obviously, it helps with fevers. You can make it, it's not the best tea. It's a tanacetum, if anybody knows that plant. So it is a sagey, stinky smelling, and I'm sure the tea tastes just like it. I've tried this a couple times. Mine is flourishing, and I'm going to pick it this year, and I'm so excited. The flowers are the medicine and the leaves. And they've done some, there's not a lot of tests on herbs, so the studies are small, and they're pretty widely varied because there's not any money if this works really good for something, right? Because you can just grow it in your backyard. So they're few and far between, but this one's been studied for migraines. And it's not just taking it when they're sick, it's a consistently taking it. And it's been shown to lessen the severity and the frequency of migraines. So you'll have to go search. I haven't tried it yet, so I don't know a dosage or anything. But there are other people who swear that at the first sign of a headache, if they'll go out and chew a leaf, which I'm sure tastes horrible, but, so does a headache. So if they go chew a leaf, that it will help their headaches. Come in.
Is it chew, leaf, and swallow, or just chew, leaf, and swallow?
Oh, I'm sure chew and swallow.
Can you chew that with a peppermint leaf at the same time?
Probably. I think I would just mash it up and swallow it. You don't have to. I wouldn't even chew it. I'd probably just roll it all up and choke it down. Yeah. I would probably skip the Oreo. That's on this end of our scale. So, okay, wait. I always skip Oreos. Lavender. Lots of people know about lavender because of essential oil. But it's the flower that is the useful part of lavender. It is so relaxing, such a sedative. You can make tea, but it takes like 3 little flowers to overwhelm your tea. I think it's better as an aromatic.
Sure.
I don't know that you might be able to do an infused oil because lavender would be really great in a skin cream because it's calming and soothing. So it would do the same thing for irritated and inflamed skin. So you probably totally could. But you would use the flowers.
Are all these perennials?
Almost all of them. The calendula is not. Oh, I didn't talk about California poppy. It's not. But the ones that I put on that are annuals are things that you will always have once you plant.
California poppies will recede.
They do. That's what I said. That's why it's an annual, but you'll always have it. California poppy I love because I have a water-wise drought-tolerant yard and it grows there. It's related to the opioid poppy, but it contains no opioids. But when we talk about the symbiotic relationship of all the constituents in a plant rather than essential oiling ourselves to extract out, it has lots of the same characteristics even without being an opioid. So it's very good for insomnia. A tincture of California poppy is good for insomnia, and it's a mild pain reliever. So it's my favorite thing to take when you just go to bed at night and you don't really hurt, but you're just a little uncomfortable. It's like if my husband said, "What hurts?" I'd be like, "I don't know. I just can't sleep."
What's wrong, just
So I love California poppy for that because it's mild pain reliever and it's really good for inducing sleep. This is lemon balm. Lemon balm is fabulously cool smelling. It's prolific grower. It's like a mint, so plant it accordingly. But one of the things, it's all of the, we're going to talk about all the lemons. Lemon verbena, lemon balm, and lemongrass all have the same. They're calming. Lemon balm's mild enough for children, so it's one of those things that when your kid's just not feeling really great and they're kind of a little irritable and grouchy and they're not happy, a lemon balm tea is a good thing because it's kind of soothing and it's calming, takes stress and nerves down a little bit. But the thing I love about this one is it's an antiviral and it's been shown to do really good job on the herpes virus. So it's a great plant to infuse in oil and make a lip balm out of. So if you struggle with that, this is a really good option.
I'm confused about what is parts used, aerial?
Oh, aerial, everything above ground, aerial.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I should have explained that. I tried to not use herbal terms that are frustrating. This is Malva. It's in the hollyhock family. It's called Malva sylvestris. It is soothing. So it is one that you would use. They typically use it in a poultice because it calms. I don't know how to explain. The herbal thing, what they say is that whatever's kind of out of whack, it kind of just soothes. It just is a mellowing. You can use it in things in place of marshmallow, like true marshmallow. This is a similar, so it's got the mucilage that marshmallow has. So it goes, you can use, the leaves are edible, the flowers are edible. You can throw them in stews and they'll thicken things because of the mucilage properties. So you can throw the flowers in a salad. And it's related to the cheeseweed. You know, has leaves like this as your kids. And you eat the little round wheel seeing with the nutty flavor. You can eat the seeds of this too. It's in the same family. So it grows really readily here where marshmallow doesn't really, so it's a good substitute. It's a Malva plant. It's a different second name. This is Malva sylvestris, but same family, same thing. As kids, we called it cheeseweed, and we thought it was so cool. There was a snack in the yard. And it gets huge. If it has water, it's aggressive. I would not plant it. Don't plant it in your garden and plant it. It's very water-wise, and it will grow well in a drought-tolerant area. It grows a single stalk with flowers on top in my water-wise area, and I have it in my herb garden, and it's about 3 feet tall and about 4 feet wide. And I end up hacking it to the ground about end of June, and then it starts over. So it's very, I'll warn you if any of these are weeds. Monarda, also calming. It makes a great tea. So this is one that people traditionally they've taken when they just didn't feel, just starting to not feel good, they would do Monarda tea. Mint, you just need mint because it hides the bad flavor of all the other stuff. Mint is also really great for digestion, so the best thing to take for digestion would be a chamomile mint combined tea. You can plant mint around an area you don't want mice to get in. I have it planted outside my chicken coop for that reason. Mint is pretty calming, and it is really good for digestion, but I seriously just use it to hide the flavor of the other stuff. Don't take any of these if you're pregnant. Just don't. They're not sure what any of them would do. I know lots of people who drink it while they're nursing. I've seen lots of people are like, I drink it and I'm fine, and then there's lots of people who say, don't touch it at all. So you're going to have to read up and make your best judgment based on what your heart says. It's good for nausea, but you have to decide. Mint is I just planted an herb garden out here in the back for us, and we're going to put mint in a pot. We will not be putting it in the garden. Yeah. Which is why I told you the lemon balm is related to mint. The next one we're going to talk about is mullein. I'm warning you, it's a weed. I'm not saying it isn't, but it is such a useful plant. Mullein is, you see it on the side of the road. It's about this tall, and it's got yellow flowers up the top, big fuzzy leaves on the bottom. Or it's those dried, they go dried dark brown and spots that your kids sword with and send seeds everywhere. That's mullein. So I'm going to tell you a really quick, I have a daughter who had 3 sets of tubes. We fought ear infections her whole life, and she's 24, and she was worried when she went on LES mission, and she was worried about what she was going to do with her ears because she tended to ear infections still as an adult. And so I read about mullein and that the flowers are good for ears, and so I planted it. But it's a biennial, so when you plant this, it won't flower for another year. So I had it growing in my yard, and I was so excited because I was going to send this. I was going to give this to her. Well, I went on vacation with my sisters. My family has a cabin up in the Sawtooth, and we were up there, and it's far away. It's an hour and a half from every kind of medical, and it's rural medical, so 5 o'clock on Friday, it's shut down until Monday morning. And so my niece showed up, and she was really just not feeling good. She was so sick, and by about 10:30 that night, there's nowhere to go. There's no grocery stores open. There's no doctors. She could have gone to the hospital, but we thought that might be excessive. She was laying on my sister's lap, and she would just whimper and pull on her ears and whimper. And my sister and I stayed up with her most of the night, walking the floor. And at 6 in the morning, we thought we'd take her outside because we were like, outside is always better for every kid. And so we took her outside, and as we were walking the loop, I saw these stalks of yellow, and I thought, oh, I haven't ever done it before, but I was like, I can try something if you want. So I started gathering mullein buds and flowers and sticking in my pocket. Everywhere we walked, I would pick some more and pick some more and pick some more. And I infused that in oil. I added a little bit of garlic because garlic's awesome. And I am not kidding you. This little girl she would lay on her mom's shoulder, and then you know how they do that uncomfortable. She would slide down her lap, want to get down, and then as soon as she got down, she would want to get back up and just whimpering. So we dropped that oil. We did a quick infusion, so we did it in a pot with water and then a little thing we hurried it up. But we dropped that oil in her ear and then pumped her ear up and down a couple times, flipped her and did the other side. She was not happy with us, and then she stood up and went. And she took off across the room to play with her cousins. Most herbs are not that fast. Most herbs you have to be patient with. But in about 5 or 6 hours, she was back on her mom's lap, and so we did it again, and off she went. Same thing. They put her to bed that night. In the middle of the night, she woke up. My sister put it in her ears. We did that for Saturday and Sunday, and by Monday, she was at the beach just fine. And I was like, where was this when my kids were little? So I love mullein for that reason. I don't know whether it deals with the infection. I don't know whether, it's obviously it was instant pain relief for her, but she was really sick. And she went to play. And it didn't heal her immediately, but it took the pain away for her. So I love mullein for the flowers. The leaves are an expectorant. So anytime I do, during allergy season, when I do like a tea for allergies, mullein is one of the plants I use because it's an expectorant, which means it gets rid of mucus. So I think it's so worth having. But once you plant one, you will never be without 50. You'll always have 50 at least. So I'm telling you that before you take it. But if you want it and you have a corner of your yard somewhere that you can put it by a shed and let it go, it's a phenomenal plant. Catnip. Also super calming, good for mellowing out sick children. It is also aggressive. We have lemon catnip. I would put it in a pot. This one is prunella. This is self-heal. This is the one that started me. It's in the mint family too. I haven't found it aggressive, but again, I have it in a less water yard. It gets purple flowers on it. It's a low grower, so that's all on your thing.
Sorry, purple flowers.
That's okay. I put that on there because I thought, rather than just know what they do, I want to know where to put them. So that's why you have heights and sun, and I didn't put bloom colors. But self-heal is good for poultices and bites. Like you can go chew up a leaf and put it on if you get stung. It's also really good as an internal tea. Just when you just don't feel good, it just helps your body be able to fight and battle. So it was used for everything for a really long time. Next is rosemary, which we talked about. Rosemary is a really good topical pain reliever. We have 2 rosemaries right now. One is called Huntington carpet. It's a trailing rosemary, but it's not a perennial here. We also have one called rosemary arp. It's a 3-foot shrub. It's mildly hardy here. So if we had a really hard winter, it's not coming back. If we have a mellow winter, you'll have it again. So
Next to a shed or next to your
protection will help. I had mine in a corner of, it was probably 10 feet from my house. It was on a corner of concrete, so it got the radiant heat, and it lived. I had it for 5 years maybe. And it only died because I'd moved it, so it was my fault. Rosemary ARP. ARP is the one that will winter. If you have any chance of wintering over, that one is. This is sage. I'm going to tell you one other cool thing. When the monks in their monasteries, as they built their monasteries, they had one room that was for herbs because that was their medicine. And when plants started getting named, anything that was from that medicinal herb room was given the second name officinalis. So this is Salvia officinalis. You guys have probably all seen the purple salvia. Same family. This is the official medicine one. So if you see a plant as you're out shopping and it says officinalis, take it home and plant it. You can learn about it later. Because that is a plant that's traditionally been used as a medicine throughout the centuries and the ages. So I think that's a cool tip. You don't even have to know anything except for that word. Buy what says officinalis. So this is sage, which is a culinary sage. It's also used as a gargle for anything to do with the mouth. So a sore throat, canker sores, cuts, or anything. It helps heal in the mouth. So you just make a tea of the leaves. And you can use it for your dressing for Thanksgiving. This is called sempervivum. You guys probably know them as hens and chicks. It's a succulent. And its leaves have properties similar to aloe vera. So all the things aloe vera does, a semp will do. So I like the fat-leafed ones because you take it off and you split the leaf open. You can put it on a burn or a cut. And the good thing, too, is that these are still around in winter. You don't even have to harvest these. You just have to go out and dig under the snow where your semps are and pull them out when you burn yourself.
Or you put them in a pot in your house.
Aloe vera has to be indoors. And you know what? When I grow an indoor plant, I hate chopping it up. Aloe vera doesn't grow like super incredibly fast that you want to be chopping leaves off all the time, right? But semps grow really fast. So I don't mind going out and pulling leaves off my semps out in the yard and using them. So this is great for burns, cuts, scrapes. And it grows like crazy. So you won't even feel bad chopping it up. Cool, huh? This one's called Solidago. It flowers profusely. I don't know if you can see that in the fall, yellow. A lot of people mistake it for ragweed. So it gets a lot of a bad rap. Ragweed is the pollen that blows in the fall and blows up everyone's sinuses. This one's pollinated by bees. So it does not cause allergy issues, but it treats them. It's a great allergy tea. You use the flowers right as they bud, not after they've bloomed. If you dry them, they turn to little like white puff balls and go all over. So you got to do it when they're in bud, and then they'll stay yellow. So the leaves and the flowers are what you would use for a tea. And so this is one of the things I put when I do it, like when I'm having allergies and I do a tea, this one goes in it. We have a tall one. You'll have to ask because it's up in the greenhouse. It's not down. And then this is a little shorty. And they're pretty good at moving. Some people think they're aggressive. They're not aggressive in my yard at all. They just make a bigger clump, so I can use a shovel. It's not like they go everywhere. But
Now, all of these herbs, like when it comes fall, do you cut them all down, or do you just leave them and...
well, here's the thing. I'm tired in the fall. And so no. I have gardened my guts out for 6 months, and I'm just like, everything go to bed and we'll deal with you in the spring. So I don't really cut things down. Yes?
I was just going to mention, I heard somebody one time say that they recommend you don't as much cut a lot of your vegetations and stuff to save them for some of the birds and things like that to also...
You can, and there's actually plants. We have one called Agastache out in the waterways. We have a whole bunch of them, and I had someone come in and say, mine doesn't live. And I was like, well, don't chop it down in the fall. And he was like, what? I'm like, it prefers. It does much better if you leave it standing, which I love because I don't want to cut it down in the fall. I'm too tired. I have Christmas to take care of. I don't need to work in my yard. So I don't really cut them all back.
So what do you, in the spring, do you, they just...
In the spring, I'm so excited, and it's too early to plant, so then I go out and clean my yard. And if they're not growing, then I cut them back. If there's no green showing, like Russian sage will be this tall, but then it'll only come out green, so then I just cut that back. I'm tired in the fall, and if it's not going to live, it's not going to live, and I'm going to buy a new one or I'm going to give up on it. So I have other things in my world that demand my attention. My garden gets all my spring, and then by fall, I'm too busy canning and harvesting the vegetables to go out and take care of the perennials. So one last one. This is Valerian. Has anybody heard Valerian? It's one of my favorite things. It's called nature's Valium, actually. It's also fabulous for insomnia. last night, my son has been gone for a long time, and he came home, and of course we stayed up, and at 2 in the morning I was like, I have to teach in a few hours. I gotta go to sleep. So I took Valerian and California poppy. It's the root on this one, and the flower smells amazing. It gets really tall. Flower's white right now. Smells beautiful. The roots are one of the foulest smelling things you'll ever see. You don't want to make a tea out of it. It smells like the worst dirty socks you've ever cleaned out of your teenage son's room. The worst. But if the world goes crazy and the apocalypse happens, I will be digging up my valerian because I'm going to be a stressed out mess and I'm going to need it. So for now, it's just growing happily. But this you usually take as a tincture. You don't really want to make a tea out of the roots, so it would definitely be a tincture, but it is awesome stuff. Tincture is just chop up the roots, fill up a thing, and then cover them with alcohol. Well, that's what I use. I don't know. I don't know anything about alcohol. There might be something else. Yeah, don't use rubbing alcohol. Use vodka. I just use a French press. You can buy that on Amazon too. And all it is a glass container, and it's got a screen on a pump. So you take that off, put your herbs in, pour your hot water in, put that on. As soon as it's steeped, which is usually 10 or 12 minutes, you just push the screen down, and it takes all the leaves to the bottom, and you can pour the tea out. So you can make your own tea bags, but it's like capsules. You can make your own capsules of herbs too, but you would have to fill the capsules in again. I have one. It leaks. For me, it oozes. And one I can't get open, and then the screen one slides leaves out the edges. So for me, it just works. You don't have to get one. You can try a tea ball or a screen. I also have a sieve, and sometimes if I'm just doing a cup, I'll just pour through the sieve and let it soak in there. It's kind of an acquired taste, I think. But I use peppermint or spearmint with everything, and honestly, and if you try vanilla and peppermint with a little ice, a little bit of maple syrup or honey in it, it's really good. I'm not just saying you can stomach it. I mean, it's like really good. Get me some more. Any other questions before we wrap up? Catnip and lemon balm are both safe for children. You could call your mother-in-law and ask her opinion. I'll tell it to you. Russian sage is bees love it. It's beautiful in late summer. It's great to put in, but it also has a use you can use. My Russian sage got to be almost 5 foot. And don't water those. They like no water or they will spread. But there's a use for them. You might as well put in something that you can enjoy the beauty and then also use. I didn't pull St. John's. We also have St. John's wort. If anybody wants St. John's wort, it's also out there. It's used for mild to moderate depression. Everything can be in pots. Ours are in pots for a little bit before you plant it. So if you go home and keep it watered and in the sun, you can do all that. What happens, people want to put herbs on their patio in a pot. Their roots get cold in the winter. So you have to do what this gentleman said. You can take them in the garage. You just got to water them once a month, and they can survive in there. But they don't live outside in a pot very well. So I will be here if you want to ask any questions or talk. There's great people out there with knowledge that can help you. But thank you for coming. I hope it was helpful. Maybe you can kind of start looking at your landscape as usable. So thanks so much.